Nigeria is Africa's powerhouse, the continent's largest economy, its most populous country, with a cultural influence on the rest of the world.
What happens in Nigeria has significant effects across its borders.
It's also Africa's largest democracy. But that democracy is at risk.
The stakes cannot be higher. To reverse a trend of democratic deterioration.
And if Africa's most influential democracy stumbles, the results could be grim for the entire continent. But Nigeria has youth on its side.
Demography will be the game changer.
In Nigeria and across Africa, young people are demanding more of their governments. So what can the politics of Nigeria's younger generation tell us about the state of democracy on the continent? And where it might be headed? It's Friday morning, and Mustafa is getting ready for school. He lives in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, in northeastern Nigeria.
Ibrahim, kaftom tabi mana. Time na makaranta yi. Wai ramje mu jira boss a can gurin sai mu tafi. Good morning everyone.
For most of Mustafa's 14 years, this area has been a hotbed of violence. Today, life in this corner of Maiduguri seems calm. But while Mustafa's school might look ordinary, appearances can be deceiving.
Nigerian great nation right now and forever.
Every one of the 2,000 pupils at this school has been directly affected by terrorism. Like many of his friends, Mustafa was orphaned by jihadist group Boko Haram. He was 9 years old.
I will never forget that day that I lost my parents. Two strangers came into our house. We had gunshot. They have killed both of my parents.
Boko Haram isn't the only threat to Nigeria's security. Large parts of the country have become practically lawless. Kidnapping now affects everyone from wealthy city dwellers to rural school children. As the government struggles to contain not just kidnappers, but bandits, insurgents, and separatists, it's little wonder that many Nigerians are losing faith in their politicians.
If a government is no longer able to provide security, it's beginning to lose. The people who should protect democracy are no longer interested in democracy if it cannot secure their lives and property.
When two nearby countries, Mali and Burkina Faso, failed to deal with insurgents, they suffered military coups. Few expect anything similar to happen in Nigeria, but the causes of its chronic instability run deep.
Kidnapping is a billion-naira industry in Nigeria. It is driven by, in many ways, the economic situation of most young people and the lack of opportunities and lack of jobs.
Youth unemployment has reached 19.6%, and more than 30% of the population live on less than $1.90 per day. Nigeria has oil, but it has not brought prosperity. Instead, it fuels corruption. Many politicians seek office to get rich and will do almost anything to win, from stirring up ethnic tension to handing out cash on election day.
The buying and selling of votes is quite a common feature of Nigeria's politics. If you think about the short-term gain a person is receiving in one transaction in selling their votes, compared to, say, earning that kind of money over the course of a month, the incentives are really, really strong for an individual to sell their vote.
It's estimated that some 18% of residents of Nigeria's northeast were offered money or a gift for their vote in 2019. Countrywide, that figure rose to 21%.
Vote markets are quite common in a number of African democracies, but also in Latin America and across Asia. Vote selling corrodes democracy very much from the inside, because at the very inception of this relationship between citizens and the state, you have corruption at the heart of it.
I'm Jonathan Rosenthal, the Africa editor at The Economist. If you'd like to read more of our Africa coverage, why not take out a subscription to The Economist? You'll receive daily and weekly updates on global affairs, and you can read us online and in the app, as well as get our audio edition. For the very best offers, click on the link below. And now, back to the film.
Nigeria's current president, Muhammadu Buhari, is 80 years old, and he's running a country with an average age of 18. The failure of older leaders to curb corruption has led to simmering frustrations among young voters. But the erosion of democracy has sparked a fight back from the country's youth. And leading the charge is Nigeria's thriving startup scene. When the shooting of a young man by the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, sparked widespread protests, it was Nigeria's startup leaders who stepped up to help the campaign.
Being private sector and being removed from kind of the patronage systems that control our politics, Nigeria's tech startups have been central to fueling a lot of the political activism we've seen in Nigeria.
The analysis for the space company, the goal here is to understand how space companies are performing.
Temidayo Onoshun is MD of Space in Africa, a startup that consults with the African space industry and governments across the continent.
I think the NSAS protest influenced a lot of things. We're seeing that we cannot trust people in government to make smart decisions for us. I think a lot of startups played key roles during the NSAS protest. Some donated money. We also had some, people working in certain startups actually getting involved in some of the organizations that were providing support for people that were physically protesting.
The protests ended suddenly when soldiers opened fire on demonstrators at Lekki tollgate. SARS was disbanded, but many protesters were still furious, and police violence remains incredibly high. The protests had shown, however, that young Nigerians would continue to demand to be heard. And in the run-up to the 2023 general election, there has been a surge of young people registering to vote. The country's electoral commission registered nearly 10 million new voters. Over 3/4 of them were under 35 years old. They're reaching a critical mass, where they can translate those numbers into influence. And some have gone further. Aisha Nyako is 31 years old. She was born and raised in Maiduguri. Last year, she joined the Young Progressives, a grassroots party launched specifically to give a voice to young Nigerians. Now she is running to be Maiduguri's council representative at the State House of Assembly. Today, Aisha is meeting potential voters at a camp for internally displaced people, where many struggle to find work. Aisha understands their frustrations. Trying to make ends meet as a single mother led to her own political awakening.
I have not been employed. I have been going off and down to different states. I need to go to Abuja. I need to go to Kaduna, all in the name of seeking for a job. So my own story is part of why I said, let me contest.
Aisha is part of a growing trend in Nigerian politics. Young voters are demanding candidates who will serve those historically ignored by the political process.
What about those women that are not educated and they have no way to get source of income? I'm running for this office to end poor representation.
Messages like this are hitting home.
Young people now recognize that they are a formidable lot. They could actually make the change that is needed to change any of the dominant party or vote in any candidate of their choice.
In Nigeria's 2023 presidential election, students and first-time voters helped to fire up the campaign of this man.
What you lack is leadership. This one wasted everybody's time. I pray your future. I don't think Nigeria will be led by a leader. A leader that understands what the problem is.
At 61, Peter Obi might seem an unlikely leader for the young, but his promise to fight corruption and move beyond ethnic politics has struck a chord with the younger generation.
The youth want a leadership that is responsive to the problem of insecurity. The money we need to invest in education, the money we need to invest in health, the money to pull people out of poverty are being stolen by people.
But in a political system where the two main parties have deep pockets, decades of experience, and few scruples, Obi faces an uphill struggle to win. It's not just in Nigeria where young people are trying to hold governments to account. Africa has some of the longest-serving leaders in the world, several of whom have been in power for longer than most of their people have been alive. Many young Africans think their rulers are out of touch and self-serving. In Uganda, protesters recently demanded an end to corruption. They're not the only ones.
Togo went for almost 1 year. Young people actually held protests against the Nyasigwe regime.
Protesters in Ghana have called on their president to step down over mismanagement of the country's economic crisis.
There are so many social movements spearheaded by young people in West Africa and Africa as a whole, holding government to account.
Back in Maiduguri, activists like Aisha are hoping to channel young people's political awakening into change at the ballot box. Demography may be on Africa's side, but there's no guarantee the demands of the young will be satisfied. Enthusiasm could well give way to disillusion. Young Africans literally cannot afford to give up.
There are significant barriers to change in Nigeria. The economic hardship that Nigerians are going through. In the last 6 years, government revenues have been down. Insecurity has become increasingly widespread. But on the flip side, there seems to be a sense of urgency, expediency, that these issues need to be addressed now. There is no opportunity for delaying on any of these challenges.
Thank you for watching. If you'd like to get more of our Africa coverage, click on the link below. And don't forget to subscribe.